February 28, 1997. A quiet Friday morning in North Hollywood, Los Angeles. People were going about their routines, sipping coffee, heading to work, kids being dropped off at school. It was supposed to be just another ordinary day. But within minutes, the calm of that morning would be shattered. What was about to unfold would leave an entire city shaken, a police force transformed, and the nation questioning how something like this could even happen in America. Two men, armed to the teeth, wrapped in homemade body armor, and prepared for war, stepped into the heart of Los Angeles and unleashed a gun battle so violent, it lasted 44 minutes and changed policing forever. This is the story of the North Hollywood Shootout, the day two heavily armed robbers turned a city street into a war zone. To understand how this tragedy began, we have to go back to who these men were, and what led them down such a dark path. Larry Eugene Phillips Jr. and Emil Mătăsăreanu were not your typical criminals. They weren't gang members or street-level thugs. They were meticulous planners, men obsessed with firepower, control, and the thrill of domination. Phillips, the older of the two, was the leader. He had a reputation for arrogance and a fascination with bodybuilding and weapons. Friends described him as controlling and calculating, a man who craved power and saw fear as a form of respect. Mătăsăreanu, on the other hand, was more reserved. A Romanian-born immigrant, he once worked as an electrician and computer repairman. He was intelligent, even gifted, but unstable and resentful. Life hadn't gone the way he imagined. He struggled with health problems, financial instability, and anger toward what he saw as a broken system. When the two met in the early 1990s, something clicked. Together, they began planning robberies, not small convenience store jobs, but grand-scale, militarized operations. They studied police response times, built body armor, and stockpiled weapons. They weren't interested in running away. They wanted to dominate the fight. Over the next few years, they committed several bank robberies across Los Angeles County, each one more violent and daring than the last. The LAPD suspected them in multiple unsolved cases but never had enough evidence to make charges stick. Everything came to a head on that Friday morning in 1997. At 9:16 a.m., a white Chevrolet Celebrity pulled up outside the Bank of America branch at 6600 Laurel Canyon Boulevard. Inside were Phillips and Mătăsăreanu, dressed entirely in black. They were covered in layers of homemade Kevlar armor, chest plates, groin protectors, leg shields, even sleeves. Underneath, they wore gloves and ski masks. Their car was packed with ammunition, nearly 3,000 rounds, and a small armory of weapons, several modified AK-47 style rifles, a Heckler & Koch K91, and multiple handguns. Each weapon had been illegally altered to fire on full automatic. Before entering the bank, they calmly took a muscle relaxant, an odd but telling detail. They wanted to stay loose, focused, and unafraid. Then, with chilling confidence, they stepped out of the car. The moment they entered the bank, chaos erupted. Customers screamed and dropped to the floor as the men fired into the ceiling. They shouted commands, ordering everyone down while demanding access to the vault. Within minutes, they had complete control of the building. They stuffed bags with cash, but this time, fate turned against them. Because of an early armored car pickup, the vault held far less money than they expected. Instead of the millions they planned for, they found just over $300,000. It was a crushing disappointment. And outside, things were about to get worse. A patrol officer, who happened to be nearby, had already noticed the suspicious vehicle and radioed for backup. Within minutes, multiple LAPD units surrounded the area. When Phillips and Mătăsăreanu stepped out of the bank at 9:24 a.m., they were greeted not by a clear escape route, but by a wall of police cars. And then the shooting began. The first bursts of automatic fire ripped through the air like thunder. Phillips opened fire with his AK-47, sending a storm of bullets across the street. Police officers ducked behind cars and concrete pillars, completely outgunned. Their standard-issue sidearms, 9mm pistols and 38 revolvers, were useless against the robbers' rifles and armor. Bullets bounced off the suspects' vests as if they were wearing steel plating. Within seconds, The quiet North Hollywood neighborhood became a battlefield. Windows shattered, alarms blared, and smoke filled the air. Civilians scrambled for cover. Some were trapped in cars, others hid in nearby shops, crawling on the floor as bullets tore through walls. Witnesses described it as a war zone. The gunfire was so intense that the sound echoed for blocks. Helicopters arrived overhead, broadcasting the chaos live across the city. For the first time in history, millions of people watched a real shootout unfold on television in real time. Larry Phillips kept advancing, firing methodically, reloading with precision. At one point, he turned in a full circle, spraying bullets at officers on all sides. Mătăsăreanu moved toward the getaway car, covering Phillips with suppressive fire. He too was hit multiple times, but his armor absorbed most of it. Officers, pinned down and desperate, began running low on ammunition. Some took rifles from nearby gun stores, realizing their handguns couldn't pierce the robbers' armor. Others used shotguns, firing at their legs, the only exposed areas. The robbers fired more than 1,100 rounds. The police returned nearly 650. For 44 long minutes, the standoff continued, neither side giving in. At 9:52 a.m., the balance began to shift. Phillips, having taken several hits to his hands and arms, was bleeding heavily. One of his rifles jammed. His car tires had been shot out, leaving him stranded. Cornered near a pickup truck, he continued firing, switching weapons, reloading with one functional hand. Then, his last rifle jammed too. Officers moved in closer. Phillips drew his handgun, firing one final burst before realizing the fight was lost. And then in one final act of control, he put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. It was 9:56 a.m. The first of the two robbers was down, but his partner, Mătăsăreanu, wasn't done yet. He managed to hijack a pickup truck and tried to flee the scene, limping from a series of gunshot wounds. He drove a few blocks before police vehicles surrounded him from every direction. The officers aimed carefully, firing at his legs, the only unprotected parts of his body. Bullets shattered his bones, and the truck rolled to a stop. Bleeding and unable to move, Mătăsăreanu finally surrendered. But paramedics couldn't reach him immediately. The area was still considered a danger zone. By the time medical aid arrived, he had bled to death on the asphalt. It was 10:01 a.m. The shootout was over. 44 minutes of relentless violence had come to an end. When the smoke cleared, the aftermath was staggering. More than 2,000 rounds had been fired. 12 officers and 8 civilians were injured. Every building and car in the area was riddled with bullet holes. Yet somehow, no innocent bystanders were killed. It was described as miraculous. But for those who lived it, the trauma was real and lasting. Officers who survived that morning said they had never felt so helpless. They'd faced men with battlefield weapons while armed only with handguns, weapons that might as well have been toys in comparison. News footage from the scene spread instantly. The sight of 2 armored men walking calmly through gunfire stunned the world. The media called it the day Los Angeles went to war, and in many ways, it was. In the days following the shootout, investigators worked tirelessly to piece together who these men were and how they had amassed such a terrifying arsenal. They soon discovered that Phillips and Mătăsăreanu were not amateurs. They'd been planning for years, robbing armored trucks, testing weapons in the desert, and modifying their guns to fire fully automatic. 4 years earlier, they had already been caught with illegal weapons and armor during a traffic stop in Glendale. Police seized their guns and explosives, but they were released on bail and continued their criminal path. Inside their homes, detectives found blueprints of banks, recordings of police scanner frequencies, and even homemade armor plates. They had studied the LAPD's every move, timing their robberies around police response patterns. Even after all these years, mysteries linger. Where did all their weapons come from? How did they get thousands of rounds of ammunition without attracting attention? Investigators traced much of it to illegal modifications and parts purchased separately. But some details remain uncertain, fueling speculation about underground connections or black market sources. And what about motive? Was it just greed or something darker? Some psychologists believe Phillips and Mătăsăreanu weren't robbing banks for money alone. They were seeking control, domination, and infamy. The way they fought, refusing to surrender, preparing for combat, suggests they expected to die that day. It was less a robbery and more a self-declared war. In the end, the North Hollywood Shootout wasn't just a tragedy. It was a transformation. 44 minutes of gunfire forever altered the way police departments operated. It changed policies, equipment, and mindset. Today, nearly every police cruiser in America carries rifles, a direct legacy of that morning in 1997. And yet, even as years pass, the footage remains haunting. Two men, dressed in black, walking fearlessly through a hail of bullets. Officers scrambling for cover. The sound of relentless automatic fire echoing down sunlit streets. It's a moment frozen in history, a vivid reminder of both courage and chaos. The North Hollywood Shootout raises questions that still resonate today. What drives a person to wage war on society? Is it desperation, delusion, or simply the desire for power? And when violence erupts in the heart of a city, who truly pays the price? The answers aren't simple, but the legacy is undeniable. On that February morning, two men took the city of Los Angeles hostage, not for money, not for fame, but for control. And in doing so, they exposed both the fragility and the resilience of those sworn to protect it. 44 minutes of chaos. 44 minutes of courage. The day the streets of North Hollywood became a battlefield, and policing in America was changed forever. This is Crimes Unknown, where cold cases refuse to stay buried. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more haunting mysteries. And don't forget to like the video to support real crime stories that deserve to be heard. Drop your theories in the comments.